Ladies and gentlemen, today a very special guest from very far away, which is New Zealand, which is totally the opposite side of the planet from where I am right now. John Casson, he is originally from the UK and he moved to New Zealand. He's famous for his Crossroad Blues Secrets YouTube channel, being a teacher and a great blues player. Hi.
Hello, Thomas. That's very kind of you. It's more than I deserve.
Oh, no. Big pleasure, because you have a very tasty way of playing the blues. I played a little snippet for your track the other day, and I have to admit, I did it really quickly, but I found out, he knows all the chords, so there's kind of, he's going to the parallel minor, and then he changed that thing, and there's kind of a nice turnaround, so he's really experienced. So
I learned a couple of chords.
Yeah, so I can tell. So when it comes to your influences, who are your heroes? What kind of guys are you listening to?
Well, it's really interesting because when I started, actually before I started, there was an advert on the telly in England a long time ago for a car, and there was a piece of music on that by a guitar player called Martin Taylor, who's a jazz player, really, but and he was playing this stuff. It was a gypsy jazz, and I thought, wow, that's terrific. And I was just getting started there. Knew my pentatonic scale, and then when I heard that, I thought, well, what's going on there? So he was a big influence, that advert, to me. But then, of course, blues-wise, there's so many great players, isn't there? B.B. King is great, the way he could just play something with a couple of notes and really make it sound beautiful, and he really took you on a journey, a story, which was lovely. And these days, I really enjoy Kirk Fletcher. I don't know if you know Kirk Fletcher.
Yeah. I know the guy. I met him. I actually met him.
Oh, did you really?
Event. Yeah, here in Germany, in Maintal, near Frankfurt. And I was playing there with my band, and he was kind of joining in with my drummer. And this was kind of a store that sells vintage gear. The old guitar. Yeah. And he was invited there, and a couple of other great players. And yeah, so we met, and he has a fantastic groove. I mean, he's the shuffle king. He's the real deal. I'm really impressed by what he's doing.
And he seems like such a nice, genuine guy, doesn't he? Too, very happy and
totally relaxed. It's kind of he's a nice guy. Let me ask you, when you started out at the beginning, how was your vocabulary evolving? I mean, did you start with that 5-note pentatonic box that everybody plays, or did you have a different concept?
Yeah, let me just...
How did...
I've got this guitar here. Do you know, when I started, I was just really bad. I mean, even today, obviously, you're still working on it every day. But yeah, I learned that box that everyone learns. But then, when I was playing, it kind of sounded like that. And I had lessons for a while. But when I'd listen to these records, and you'd hear players. And I thought, well, something like that, better than that. But you'd think, what was going on there? And I just couldn't work it out, Mm-hmm. So it wasn't till years later I realised, they're mixing a lot of things together, major pentatonic and minor pentatonic too,
Minor,
Yeah, I didn't realise that that's what you had to do. I just thought it was one thing, pentatonic, minor, major, and then thirds and sixes, and you would just do that rigidly, I didn't realise you had to mix it. And that, I guess, was...
found out...
Sorry, I was going to say,
yes,
and that
please.
was kind of really why I wanted to start this Blues Secrets channel, because I found that when you watch players, sometimes when they give a lesson, the lesson isn't what they've just played. And I think sometimes all the answers are when you watch great players play, and you think, I'm missing something here in the lesson. That's not what they're playing when they play live. They're teaching something different. And being a teacher, I guess it's easier to do that, because it's very easy to teach a scale, isn't it? And it's a very easy thing to teach, and it's a very easy thing to learn. But the creativity side of it is kind of out there somewhere. Like, how do you go from a scale to playing maybe, what the type of things that you're playing, or, Kirk Fletcher's playing, or B.B. King is playing? It just seems on a different level, I
know what you mean, because when you try to teach, you simplify things, and you're losing that kind of experience. If you play the blues, and the older you get, the more experience you can make by trying out different things, and that makes you a different player from like your standard pentatonic thing. So I think it's very important that we still learn fresh notes and discover those extra notes that we haven't played when we were beginners. And I think it's sometimes hard to explain what I'm doing there. It's like it's a linear thing to explain. Okay, now I'm in the minor pentatonic. Oh, now I'm in the major pentatonic. But actually, it's like, well, there's this note, there's this note, and I use them both. And why do I do it? It's like, I just do it because it sounds right.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it? It's very much like a language. Like, you can explain the alphabet really well, and words and grammar and sentences, but it doesn't make you write Harry Potter. You can know all the alphabet,
no.
And you can be really good at it, but it doesn't really help you much. And music is exactly the same, isn't it? You're learning the notes. Okay, I know that's an A note, but when you hear it in a solo, it's beyond the sum of its parts, isn't it? It's just music. When you watch someone who plays really well, you think, oh my gosh, that's a real beautiful experience. So I mean, you're always learning, aren't you? And so starting in the pentatonic, and then you get more interested in maybe playing over changes and that kind of thing, and especially going back to the gypsy jazz, that was quite interesting, because they're playing slightly different voicings of chords, aren't they? And I think it's nice to learn different styles, because you can add a bit of that, into your blues playing if you want to, Or, if you were playing at gypsy. Which is always useful, you can put these things in, and it, sometimes takes people on another way, another journey.
It's different colors, It's like, and the freer and the more spontaneous you can work with these colors, the more art you create. And for me, when I try to teach people, which I'm not doing very often, I found that it's so important that you kind of play like a child, that you kind of are open and discover things, and not kind of repeat just patterns that you learn. It's kind of, I always try to make things that people free up, that they, Kirk Fletcher, for instance, he's grooving like so good,
Yeah.
When he got a, wait, where's my sound? really playing anything, but I'm grooving. You know, it's like
Yeah.
the groove keeps everything together, and then once you kind of get lost in the groove, you know, it's like you go.
Yeah, that's great.
Groove was a very strong element from Kirk Fletcher when I saw him playing. That
Yeah.
was killer.
So when you started, as a teacher, I'm always interested in asking people because, you know, I don't consider myself to have any particular talent, but I do have a passion for it and I love playing every day. I've never really thought of practicing. I just like playing. But when you started guitar, how old were you when you started, Thomas?
I started late. I started with 13. And it kind of, 13, you know, and it kind of was so fascinating that after half a year, when I get the very basics, you know, the first half year was a bit harder. And then I reached a level where I could enjoy, you know, just playing the guitar so much that I lost everything. Time. I just came back home from school and I started to. I could go on for just get lost in the music, and I was just grooving and practicing at the same time. 5 hours later, I was still playing in A minor or and going crazy. Like, I got totally lost.
You're fantastic at playing lots of different styles too, aren't you? So was that something that just came naturally that you felt, oh, I'm interested in this style, I'll do that? Or?
Yeah, but before I was playing the guitar, I was already a music fan listener. You know, I had a very interesting record collection. It's kind of, even I didn't know. I listened to Hank Marvin, like Apache, because that was on a tape of my mother's, you know, cassette still. She had that somewhere, and I was fascinated by that Stratocaster tone. So later I found out it was the Shadows and Apache, but I know that tune when I was like 6 years old or something. And then for my father's side, he had some friends that were kind of into blues and the Rolling Stones. So I was impressed by that music a lot. And then I even was listening to like Al Di Meola, Return to Forever, you know, like very progressive Chico Rea stuff at very young age, and a very wide range of music. I mean, Who Quadrophenia was a great album that I remember listening to even before I played. You know? So my mind, my brain was already living in that kind of different musical worlds, just in my imagination, you know. And then when I picked up the guitar, of course, I tried to learn what I had in what I heard before, you know, or you know, the Who and you know all these chord things or Keith Richards things, and yeah, and Blackmore was a big hero. I think Deep Purple in rock was an album that at one point I could play from the beginning to the end, because it was like, and then
Yeah.
dong, 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 da, 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 dong.
I think it's inspiration, isn't it? Because I see a lot of students, because I teach in schools, and you know, sometimes they're young, you know, young players, and sometimes they're older, and I always try and ask them, you know, what do you want to play? And a lot of them look at me like I'm absolutely crazy, and they say, well, I want to play the guitar, you know. And I say, well, yeah, but do you like the blues, or do you like rock, or pop music? Well, you know, because I want to show you what you'd like to learn. But that they say quite solemnly, no, I'd like to learn the guitar. So, okay. Well, but it's good to have that big picture, isn't it? Because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I find the guitar a very difficult thing to play. So when you get a bit fed up, not only is it good to buy gear, but it's good
Of course, yeah.
it's good to look at the big picture and look at your heroes and try and remind yourself of why you're doing it. And inspiration, I think, is the key, really. But I do think, in terms of creativity, do you think you can learn creativity, or do you think that's something you're born with?
I'm not sure. I found it quite easy for myself, because somehow I feel like I'm connected to be playing like a kid still at my age. It's kind of, I wake up and I have that kind of kid energy, you know. Whatever I do, I come up with new ideas. I have that. I want to create something, you know. I'm not painting because I'm a lousy painter, but it's like I have ideas for, you know, products, for, you know, new amps or new features on amps. So my brain is always in a creative mode, and I've always been like that. I always had that kind of energy. Other people might not have that energy, and then if I have a guitar in my hand, it's automatic. I can play that instrument without having a concept. I just grab it, and then it's like, I don't know what I'm experiencing next. I'm open. It's like I play something, and then there's an interaction with me and that guitar. So this is why a guitar or gear is inspiring, because a certain guitar has a certain tone, or say a certain. For me, I sometimes tell to people, like, there's music built in that guitar. You know, I pick up that guitar, and that guitar has so much inspiration that I can write songs with that guitar, because it's just the character of that guitar. So it has so certain things that inspire me to do things, and that's the magic of gear. But I can even do it without gear. When I go to like a beautiful place, I've actually never been to New Zealand. I've made it to Australia, but you know, when you come from Europe or from Germany, you go to such a, you know, different place, and you experience the vibe there. It makes you like, wow. And then there's a feeling, and that feeling translates into your writing or playing. It's like I can use, once there is that kind of energy, I can transfer this into mostly creative things like songs. I learned to write songs. I actually wrote a few songs in Australia just because the atmosphere made me do that.
Wow, that's great, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's always an interesting discussion. I always like to ask people, do you think, you know, creativity you can learn? Or, I mean, it's certainly something you can develop, isn't it? Like, for example, if you had, I don't know, that little pentatonic box, and you could, you know, find different ways to play that, couldn't you? You know, you can slide to notes or hammer. So, and all these things slowly become a part of your kind of tool set that you can use to, you know, create things.
Absolutely. And I found one thing, when I watch people play, you know, some people have always feel like they are not good. It's like, they always have a bad conscience of, I don't know all the licks, I don't know all the chords, I can't play before maybe that's a very German thing. If you don't know all the chords, you are not allowed to play the guitar, and I always try to tell people it is not, it's not about what you don't know, it's about use what you know and be confident about what you know and still be curious to know more things. And one thing is also important, that the groove, I can see when people move with their feet, like counting, and if the beat is in sync with their body and what they play, it's like, oh man, this guy is easy, if so, then it's a solid thing. And other people go like, the foot goes this tempo, and 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 that's kind of hard. So I try to get the guys, when I teach, to that experience, to let loose and go with the flow and establish a groove. No, that helps a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because these days, when you look at YouTube, it's so intimidating. There's a billion guys, most of whom are not playing guitar for a living. They're working in the supermarket, but they're just incredible players, And but when you look back to some of the early jazz guys, you look at these players on YouTube and you think to yourself, well, I should sound like that. And then you watch another video and you think, I should sound like that guy. And you're flitting around trying different styles and so on, which is a good thing because you learn things. But at the same time, the early jazz guys, they were all trying to find their own unique sound, weren't they? Which ultimately makes people want to listen to you. But that's, I think, the dilemma is that, you listen to all these other players and you want to sound like them, and no one wants to hear someone who sounds, I don't like Kirk Fletcher. Let's say, look, you could learn exactly Kirk Fletcher or Stevie Ray Vaughan licks and you'll sound great. But when you want to listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan, you're going to listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan. You're not going to listen to me, who's playing a bad impression of Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Exactly.
So ultimately, you've got to leave that behind at some point and see if you what. That's the hardest thing, isn't it? I found, because once you learn some scales and some songs, you come to the realization, hang on a minute, what am I going to say? Have I got anything to say with this? And sometimes you've got to admit to yourself your limitations, but that's also a good thing, where you think, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, but I'm going to try and be me. I'm going to try and do my own thing if I can.
Yeah. Be yourself. It is. People want to listen to you and not you trying to be a copy, which is like you always be second. So you can only be the original, whatever, John or the original Thomas. And of course, I can use a few vocabularies of other players, but I will never be them, because there's a whole life behind that. And the moment you learn that it's okay to be yourself and it's okay not to be the best, that's the moment where you start to be yourself, and you can do it with very, very, very simple things. I mean, if you think about famous people, like, is Mick Jagger the best singer on the planet? Well, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But he's doing his thing so convinced that, you never ask. And the same like with Keith Richards. I mean, Joe Satriani plays 300,000 more notes, and Richards plays five strings, but he's the original. I mean, he plays 3 chords, and it's fun to listen to that thing, and he composed Angie, which is one of the greatest tunes ever. So that's personality, and I'm impressed by personality when the person speaks to me through the music. And I think blues is one of the purest forms of doing that, because it's not about how to say distraction of shredding. It's kind of, it show me your personality, and this is what it's about, and forget about the whistles and bells. Just be yourself. And
yeah, there's nowhere to hide sometimes with the blues, is it? Yeah. Because it's in something that's not always slow, is it, the blues? But everything stands out, like your vibrato, your intonation, the way you bend strings. If it's slightly out, you can hear it. Whereas rock, of course, is a lot of attitude, which doesn't matter if you play something perfectly, because it's the attitude and playing with feeling. Obviously, blues, you're playing with feeling too, but there's not a lot of places you can hide. It's just you and the guitar, isn't it, really? But,
and I think that's the beauty about it. And I think that's the beauty about the blues, and that's the beauty about the guitar, and that's the beauty of what you're doing on your channel, because you kind of focus on that aspect. And going back to the internet, it's good to see people like you going to that side of the guitar playing, and not to be the flashiest guy that shows the 1 minute impressive thing, and then it's okay too. But I feel that side that you are doing on your channel is missing these days. So I'm very happy that you do your thing, and that some people like you do that thing, so we don't forget about that core quality of playing the guitar and not showing off all the time.
Yeah, I think there's a call for some of that. Sometimes, it's great, and we spend hours, learning techniques, don't we? And then I find sometimes I don't use them in my playing much. In a jam situation, I feel a bit funny doing that, but I do love trying to help people and demystifying what it's all about, because from my point of view, when I started, it was like, what is this thing? It's so confusing. There's, all these frets here, and, and it seemed to me that you were just kind of doing that. I realised that you do a bit more than that. But so I've always wanted to simplify it and show people that, look, you don't have to have any talent. You can be creative, you can learn creativity, but one thing I've discovered over the years is it's experience more than anything, because I used to think I would go for a guitar lesson, and I'd think that this is the time where I'm going to learn the guitar, I'm going to learn all the secrets, and then I'd buy a DVD and I'd say, but this DVD is going to give me the secrets. And then I went on like that for years. Well, still going, actually, 30 years later. Trying to find the one lesson that is going to give me the secrets. But then during that time, I've realised, but I've learned a lot of things over the years, ways to approach things like we were talking about before, and that builds up to creativity. So whilst you don't necessarily have to have any skills, you might know 100 ways that you can approach 2 notes, which makes it, easier. So I'd like to try and pass that on if I can, and show people it's not that hard. There are simple ways of doing, as long as you find a way that you understand.
Absolutely. Hey, one last personal question. You are coming from the UK, now living in New Zealand.
Yeah.
What made you move?
You know what? I was living in Amsterdam, funnily. I was a computer teacher in Holland, and we were all made redundant. And I heard about New Zealand. I didn't know anything about New Zealand. I didn't even know there was 2 islands, I don't think. I was quite stupid. And I went back to London because, I was made redundant. And then I thought, I can't live here anymore. This is very difficult. I like the feeling of living overseas. So I just bought a ticket. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anywhere to go or stay. I just bought a ticket and I arrived here. And when I got here, I thought that wasn't a very good idea, was it? You know, and so luckily everything worked out. I got a job in computers straight away, but I'd learnt guitar, and I went to the Guitar Institute in London for a time, and then my dad, who was a really big jazz fan, and he had a jazz club, and he met all the greats, Dizzy Gillespie, and you know, he went to Birdland and met them all, helped them in their dressing room, and he had a jazz club, and it went bust, unfortunately, because it was in England, and there was a jazz musician, I don't know if you know Acker Bilk, but he was playing in a jazz club on the other side of town to my dad's, and it was on the same night, but it was no problem. But then they hired Acker Bilk, who was under contract, and then he released Stranger on the Shore, which became this huge hit. So everyone started to go to this other jazz club. My dad's jazz club closed down, and he never reopened, and he ended up working for the post office all his life. And the last conversation I had with him, he said to me, "I wish I'd have done the jazz club," you know. And I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, you know, I should really try and do something with music at whatever level you're trying to do, even if it's just, you know, playing one chord and it sounds bad. You should try and pursue your passions." So I thought, oh, well, I'll try and do it, you know, for my dad, really. I'll try and give up my job in computers, and I'll just try and see if I can teach guitar and play guitar for a living.
Wow.
And so I've done that for about 15 years now. So I've been very lucky, really. So with that in mind, I always think if you can follow your passion, no matter what it is, it doesn't necessarily have to be guitar, but you know, if you like guitar, then go for it. At whatever level you're playing, that's great. You're part of music, and that's wonderful, I think, you know.
John, thanks so much for these kind and wise words, because you know, we all have to think about what role is music playing in our lives, and you are an example of how far you can go with it, and I think that opens up thoughts, and I think it's so important because there's only one life to live, and you shouldn't regret too much.
No, you're right. And I mean, I must say, for me, you know, started guitar. I mean, I was watching your videos on how to play. I remember you did some videos. So to be able to talk to you and do a bit of playing with you, like we've done, has been really, you know, for me, a real honour to do that, because I never thought when I started guitar it was, you know. I remember thinking in a job I was doing, what's the most crazy thing I could end up doing for a job? And I thought, playing guitar. I could play guitar for a living. And that idea of me playing guitar was so stupid, because I was so bad that the idea of it. So to sit here talking with you is, you know, just amazing, really.
Oh, for me, I just do my thing, and I'm excited about what I do, but I don't think that much about it. Anyway, that's all I can say. You know, this is not planned or anything. My whole entire life is I follow my intuition, and I do things that feel kind of right to me, and the rest is, if it works, I do it again, and hopefully I make some money so I'm not going bankrupt. That's my whole philosophy.
I think that's always the right thing to do. If you don't know, somehow things just work out. You don't know how they're going to be, but like you say, you've got that feeling, and you think this feels right. I'm just going to give this a go, and you might be bad at it, but as long as you got that feeling, I think everything will work out all right.
See? Hey, John, thanks so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much,
guys,
Thomas.
And check out the Crossroad Blues Secrets, his channel on YouTube. Cheers.
Thanks.